All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Is anybody on Zoom? Can y'all hear me? All right, good deal. All right, welcome everyone to the October Planning Commission meeting. We're going to start off with a word of prayer by Vice Chair Chuck Prater and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by me. Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay, everybody hear me okay? Please bow. Gracious Heavenly Father, we gather here tonight as citizens of this community to discuss issues which affect us every day. We gather to bring forth our concerns and desires. We gather to study these issues and determine the best course of action for both our city and our citizens. We ask, Lord, that you oversee these decisions we make, and in the end, that they bring glory to you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chuck. Join me in the pledge. The flag's back there at the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. All right. Kim, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call, please.
Bird. Lowe.
Here.
Prater.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Ward. Here. Mowdy. Here. Urban.
All right. We do have a quorum. If I can go ahead and get approval of the meeting minutes from last month for the Planning Commission from September. If you got any comments or questions or corrections, please give me those. If not, I'd recommend approval.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve from Lowe.
Second.
Second from Prater. Roll call, please.
Bird.
Yes.
Lowe.
Yes.
Prater.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Mowdy.
Yes.
All right, minutes are approved. Let's go ahead and get into the first item on the agenda. We're going to open the public hearing. It's 7:02. And the first item on the agenda, Kim.
Rezone from R1 to C2, undeveloped North Polk Street.
Kevin, if you want to kick us off, if you can unmute yourself. Please
Good
give
evening.
staff report.
Good evening. Your staff report shows a property located on North Polk Street. It is south of North 2nd Street. If you want to orient yourself, it's that stub street that as you're heading south stops just short of the railroad tracks. The subject property, as you see on your screen, it's in that light blue color. It's actually a 10-acre piece, but the applicants are actually requesting a rezoning for 2.19 thereabouts acres of that 10-acre piece from the existing R1 zone to the C2 zone. So they're requesting C2 zoning for roughly 2.2 acres. In your report, you'll see there's a Google Street View looking southward. The gate that is shown in the photo in your report has apparently been removed. It's no longer gated. The railroad tracks you cannot cross, but the actual road is not gated, and it is a publicly maintained road. I know that that was an issue during the tech review. Your land use plan that you have adopted for this area actually calls it as planned development. We've seen projects for rezoning from residential to commercial with this planned development land use, where I guess when the comprehensive plans were done, there wasn't a definitive future use, whether it be commercial or industrial. So it just simply says planned development. So the request for rezone is not out of character with the area or your land use plan. Your report does speak to the fact that as you go down South Polk Street, that it does cross a floodplain. There are some issues that are more in line with when they go to permit and when they get their final approvals to construct what they should do with respect to emergency 911. But the road is open. It is not gated. And there are some items in your report that deal with roadway improvements. And we can speak to that through question and answer period. But overall, staff didn't take any major issues with this, but we will leave that to you all to discuss. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Is anybody here to speak for this item? If you would, state your name and address, please.
Hey, my name's Angie.
You'll have to put that right up to your mouth. I mean,
Let's give it a little mic.
yeah, that's great.
My name's Angie Horn, and Andrew Neal is here. He actually purchased the property, but together we own and operate Good Earth Learning Center. We're at 511 Ernie Davis Road in Austin, Arkansas currently. That's the residence and the business.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what the planned use is
For the
for the property? Yeah.
So what our plan is, we currently operate a forest and farm school at 511 Ernie Davis Road, and it's, we've been open about 6.5 years. We currently serve 42 children, and we have approximately 39 children enrolled in the program right now. So it's a viable business. It took off and went well. It's accepted in the community well. So what we're wanting to do is relocate that business to North Polk Street, and it will no longer be a forest and farm school, but just a forest school.
Okay. Great. Commissioners have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Angie. Yes, appreciate it.
Okay.
Is anybody here to speak against this? All right, seeing none. Commissioners, any questions or further discussion or questions from staff? If not, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Motion to approve from Prater. Do I have a second?
Second.
From Byrd. Roll call, please.
Byrd,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Mounty,
Yes.
All right, that rezone is approved. Thank you. All right, next item of business, item B.
rezone R1 to R4M, 801 and 904 Eagle Street, formerly Mockingbird Lane, Lemons Engineering.
All right, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm not going to vote anyway, but I'm going to still stay here to control the machine, but I'm recusing myself from this item. If you wouldn't mind putting that in the minutes. Kevin, if you would, please give us a staff report.
Yes, sir. The property in question tonight is it's a range 801 to 904 Eagle Lane. Apparently, this stretch of roadway was formerly known as Mockingbird Lane. Just to orient yourself, if you're coming off of North Locust Street, it veers north from there. We'll get further into the report, but the applicant is essentially requesting that we get a rezone for the subject property from R1 to R4M. That would be your medium density residential zoning classification with a maximum density of 12 units per acre. It's roughly 4.9 acres. The parcel does lie within a mapped floodplain. There are some flood issues there, at least from a regulatory standpoint, that will need to be worked out. But that's more at the site plan stage. In your report, you'll notice that the property does have a land use that's called manufactured home. It is a land use that is in the area, but that's more for the existing mobile home park to the south and the east. But the land use plan actually extends that planning category to this parcel. But nonetheless, that land use isn't necessarily out of character with this piece, but it is interesting that you do have somewhat of some environmental constraints there. So that'll be something that the Planning Commission may want to consider as they deliberate about what the highest and best use for this parcel is. But overall, having an R4M isn't out of the pale because you do have some R4M to the south and to the south and west. But to the north and the immediate east and west, you have some existing R1. So this really is the transition. This is the last sort of undeveloped out parcel from this legacy subdivision. It does happen to be bisected by a mapped floodplain. That may be the reason why it never went and redeveloped. But right now, from a land use planning standpoint, at least the policy is that this not necessarily developed the same way as the existing single family detached. So that's some food for thought for you all as you deliberate. There is a sketch in your report from the applicant, both with and without superimposing on our GIS map. You can see how the floodplain does kind of cross through some of the concept sketches that the applicant submitted. From a pure land use zoning decision policy standpoint, this is just a sketch plan. It hasn't been vetted through a formal site plan process. You may want to look at this more from a policy standpoint. We don't know whether this project could build out to the density that they're showing, but this concept would max out the 12 units per acre as an FYI. So their concept shown here would require the full density that an R4M would offer. There are a few items in your items in the last page of your report. The applicant has addressed the fact that there has not been a letter of map amendment submitted to FEMA. They're suggesting they would do so if they were to be granted an upgrade in their zoning. There is a little bit of an issue about the addressing of the applicant. We may want to get that verified, but I will let you all deliberate. If you have any questions, I'm here to help answer them.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll let Vice Chair run the rest of the meeting.
Okay, here's this rezoning kind of goes with the area that's already there. Can somebody here represent this, Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, members of the planning commission. Thank you. I get out of jail so I can take that mask off. That's a great idea. My name is Tim Lemons, Lemons Engineering, and I got to say that it's awesome to actually have all of you under one roof. I think this is the first time this has happened since March, February. So it's great to see your smiling faces, not have to look at what looked like the Brady Bunch when we got all the pictures up there. I am representing this project. I have with me tonight Mr. Sam Emerly, who is here to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer. This property is surrounded, as Kevin said, it is surrounded on the south and a little bit to the west with identical zoning what we're looking for. In fact, I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to take you through that real quick tonight, if Mr. Chair would help me out there. Here's a copy of the survey that was done a few years ago by the previous owner, 4.9 acres, and yes, the floodplain is shown as an approximate location there on the site. I would like to point out that this is a floodplain, it's not a floodway. So if we are approved here tonight, we get ready to do the site plan, we will make sure that the buildings are shown and built above the 100-year flood zone campus regulations, and we'll make sure this goes through FEMA's protocol to ensure that everything is kosher with him. At the next page, here's an entrance into the property, and there's a little rezone sign we put up prior to the deadline. The next page is after you get onto the property, now you're looking due east, and you can't really see it here, but on the next couple of pages, I believe we can show there are existing structures on this property. Owners rezoned from R1 to R4M. This was formerly Mockingbird Lane. Whereas the property has been zoned R1 for many years, it presently has grandfathered in as multifamily because there are two multifamily structures that already exist on this property. Next. Here's one of the existing structures. This is a duplex that has address 801 and 803 Eagle. And the next picture is the other duplex. It is at 904, 906 Eagle. 904, 906, we have done an elevation certification on this. It actually is out of the flood zone, although it's in the shaded area. but the other structure is nowhere close to the flood zone. So as far as existing flood conditions, this one, both buildings are presently above the 100-year flood zone. There are multi-family immediate area, and I won't go through the entire list, but there's a little greater than what we've got. All of the pictures that I'm showing here are within 500 to 600 feet of the existing property, and they range from multifamily to duplexes to triplexes.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair. I guess,
I think we're getting close to the end of the pictures.
yeah, okay. Is there anybody here to, for or against this? Please step up, state your name and address, please.
Tim, if you could take the wipes, wipe it down.
It's on the map.
Matt Weber, 47 Pond Street. I have a couple of questions. I understand this is just the rezone. So this is a dead-end street, correct? One ingress, one egress. Four conditioned street already. If this goes to maximum density, how many cars here are you estimating in and out of this area? It's already saturated. Thank you.
Mr. Owens, will you address that?
Pardon me just 1 second.
Okay.
Just can't be too careful.
Whenever this is over.
At present zoning, we are looking at 4.9 acres and 12 per acre, looking at 58 units. Again, that is if we utilize the maximum density, so 58 units, that would equate to, yeah, 2 cars per house, so it'll be 116 cars. Would like to point out that, yes, this is one way in and one way out. The city is not to city standard, the street's not to city standards. Of course, during the site plan, I'm quite sure that Public Works is going to make us bring that street up to city standards. So that issue will be resolved. And once you get out of this particular, you actually have a couple different ways you can go to get out of the subdivision, which you get past this property. You go on Park Street, or you can go on, I think it's 4th Street. So there's multiple ways out of the property. I would also like to point out that we are nowhere close to what the limitation is by ISO standards as far as a dead-end street with vehicles. You can actually get up to well above 200 units on multifamily before you have to provide a second way in and out. And we are well below that at 58. And a perfect example of that would be the reserve at the Pines on 89 South. There's 144 units going in there, one way in, one way out. So we are definitely meeting and exceeding codes as far as transportation. Granted, the street does need to be fixed, because right now it's a glorified asphalt drive. Yeah, so we're close to 6 stacks.
That'll come in the site plan.
Yes, we'll address that site plan. Yes.
Right. I guess kind of my concern here is too is should we get a letter of approval from FEMA before we do this rezone?
Actually, the zoning, the rezone, I would hate for my client to be out tens of thousands of dollars to go through the design process to get this property out of FEMA, because what we have to do is show where every building is going to be out of flood zone. I'd really rather us not cause my client to, I mean, I love to spend his money, but I'd really rather us get the rezone done and then we come back. Keep in mind too, though, that even though we do have a flood zone on the property, there is property outside the flood zone that could be developed with the tree zone without us getting in the flood zone. But truthfully, I believe that the flood zone issue will easily be taken care of when we send it to FEMA. No floodway on this property whatsoever, just floodplain.
Does anybody else from the public have anything to comment on this?
I have a question.
Yes, I'd like to put it up to state.
What?
Go ahead, I'd like to put it up to state. For commission.
Is the street remaining, or proposed to remain public? that the intent?
That's our intent, yes.
What triggers street improvements for that public street?
Oh, gosh.
They will have to bring the entire street from property line to where the street ends up to city standards, because it will remain a city street.
Is that with the first building, or is that with a proposed development of several buildings?
Do you plan on this being phased?
Yes, we are in phase six. What generally has been what we've done in the past is we have a phase development that once we get past the first phase, the key thing there is a adequate turnaround for emergency vehicles. So what we've done in the past with Cabot Fire Department is, with their blessing, is to put in what would be a gravel turnaround at the end of phase one, so that they can turn the emergency vehicles around. And then eventually, as we build the project out, we have a car service turnaround at the end of the job, so that we don't have any more gravel. But that has been policy in the past.
I guess my question is, what triggers the street improvements though? Can you build one duplex at a time, what street improvements, or if 2 or 3 of those come in at one time, does that trigger street improvements?
Street improvements will have to go all the way till, so if they do the first 2 buildings, street improvements will have to be done for those first 2 buildings. The turnaround will have to be installed. They do 2 more, street improvements have to be continued, the turnaround has to be.
So if they start on the end of the project, at the dead end,
They would have to do street improvements all the way till they get to that building.
And as far as street improvements, we're talking curb and gutter, sidewalks, storm drain, basically make it a city street. Like that fact, a lot of sidewalks you didn't have to ask.
The drainage will have to be done, number 1, regardless. The drainage improvements.
Will the drainage improvements go all the way to the end of the development, or will that be phase by phase also with the streets?
We will have to do the design on everything at once. And then if he wants to phase construction, that's his, prerogative. But I can tell you, based on what I've seen out there, I'm quite sure that there will have to be some drainage improvements done, in front. We'll have to do some improvements there. Or we have to put everything in lock, stock, and barrel. I'm not sure yet until we get into the design, but I can assure you there will be some done on the first phase.
Tim, do you anticipate any detention requirements for the site?
Haven't really got into it that much. If we do have to do detention, we do have a green space that is south of the 4 buildings on the south side of the road. So we do have room for detention if we have to do it. We had other calculations here today.
Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, I think on Mr. Weber's point earlier, when we were talking about that one street, I went back there today, I'm talking to myself. Yeah, I gotta eat this one too. So I went back there today, I thought you were talking about the whole street. Is there only one entrance when I saw those other ones that have already been built? I went back there today, there's only one way in and out.
There's just one road going into this property, correct?
But what about the other multi-unit units?
Actually, if you, I wish I had a laser pointer, but,
I was thinking it'd be more than 200 if you had those.
right. But I believe from where our property line is to the very end, we're going to be less than 750 feet, which is the maximum that we could have under normal conditions. And we will be below that 750 feet. If you go about 200 feet south of our property, you come to the intersection of Eagle and I believe it's Park or North. I can't remember which one it is, but there is an intersection just south of that, about 200 feet. And I may be wrong with the street names. One of them's North, one of them's Park.
Any other comments from the commission? Anything else from the public? Yes, sir.
Touch the mic, so I don't need to be wiping it off.
There you go.
State your name, please.
My final question, Neil, is why you're not approving
We've had some issues with individual homes in the area because of some of the expansion issues. And as far as I'm concerned, being a citizen of Cabot, I would think you put on all the revenue you can get, help the city grow. And the city is screaming right now for places for people to move. I myself own several rental properties, and we get calls almost every day. People want a place to rent. It's in a good, safe community. And I'm speaking on behalf of my properties, the people that I know. I don't see the reason why you would not approve this. This, in my opinion, is a very positive thing for the city. The city needs people, and the owner needs to be able to pay taxes to the city. And I appreciate if y'all consider doing this, because I've got several coming up also. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else from the commission? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to, for a rezone from R1 to R4M.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion from Bird to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Okay, roll call vote.
Bird,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Prater,
Can I vote, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Okay. Yay.
Ward,
Yes.
Mounty,
Yes.
Okay, the motion's approved. And I turn it back over to Mr. Young.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Let me switch back over to the other PowerPoint. All right, 7:27, we're going to close the public hearing, and we'll move down to our next item of business. Kim?
final plat, Lakewood subdivision, phase 2A, lots 71 through 99, Lemons Engineering.
Kevin, if you would, give us a staff report, please, sir. You're on mute.
Apologies.
There you go.
Thank you. We last saw this project in September, but it was tabled by the commission for a number of outstanding issues, some of which have been alleviated since the last meeting. Some are still outstanding per your report, but for the greater good, I will run through the project briefly. This is at the 2300 block of Lakewood Circle. Now you can see in your report, it's an extension of an existing single-family detached residential subdivision, getting access on the south side of Bill Foster Memorial Highway. You can see that Phase 2A consists of 29 residential lots and 1 common area lot. This is shown on the final plat. You can see in your report, there's been a couple of changes to the final plat from the last meeting. Most notably, lots 92 and 93 have been denoted with some flood notes. Those 2 lots were not included in the letter of map revision that was approved by FEMA for this. And so those 2 lots are technically not removed from the SFHA until they get their own individual approval. So that will have to come at a later time. There's also some notes on the plan regarding the sidewalk connection. I know that there were some concerns about how the sidewalks extend southward, but then needed to be a way for them to connect. There are some comments in your report to that end. There are also there was a comment about secondary access and the number of units. That discussion is still outstanding, and that's probably going to be something that the commission wants to discuss tonight. Other than that, I will not read directly from the report, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Tim, are you representing the applicant?
Yes, again, for the record, my name is Tim Lemons with Lemons Engineering, and I have with me tonight the developer of Lakewood, Mr. Jim Green. So, if there's anything I can't help you with, I know Mr. Green would be more than willing to do so. On the items that are outstanding,
Tim, if you could speak a little closer and louder, just for our folks online. Just put it in your mouth. There you go.
thank you. I would like to, if I could, real quick, discuss the sidewalk issue. Presently, the sidewalk comes down the west side of Lakewood Circle down to into the city of lot number 21. What we have requested is if we could to bring the sidewalk on down and bring it across between lots 72 and 73 where we have a wide common area, which I believe would probably facilitate a crosswalk there with the signage and the handicap ramps better than it would be in the middle of lot 71, which was discussed, I believe, by staff. So that's one thing. We're not trying to get out of building sidewalks. We just feel like there would be a better connection if we brought it down to the common area between 72 and 73. So if y'all would like to discuss that, we can do that.
So Tim, there's several things that are outstanding for a final plat. That's typically we see asphalt paving, as-built, street lights. I mean, there's a whole list of things in the staff report that need to be complete prior to final plat being submitted. There's still the issue last time we talked about the second way out needing to be resolved, that there's only one entrance and one exit out of the subdivision, and it currently exceeds the number of dwellings.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Green to feel free to jump in at any time on that, but there's been some history on this project that I don't know that anybody that's here was even on the planning commission back then, but when this project was first originally in the concept plan, we showed up to 3 ways to get into this property. And at the time, the planning commission at that time said, no, we want one entrance. So that's what we built. And so the first thing we developed was that one Highway 321. So to honor the city's request back in, I believe, 2005, we put in the one entrance. Now, fast forward to approximately 2-3 years ago when we were working on the preliminary plat, I believe this phase, the planning commission again said, okay, well, we still would like to at least plan for a second entrance. And so we did make allowances by dedicating a right of way or setting aside a strip of ground as a right of way going north off of the previous phase. And that is still there until someday we are hoping that whoever owns the property north of us would then be caused to tile with our road and take it out to 321. So therefore, my client has done everything the city is asking him to do. And every time we come back with a preliminary final plat, we have to discuss this option once again.
So Tim, where's that drive? That's the second.
You want lots of between that secondary entrance that we set aside on the preliminary plat.
It is at the end.
Hey Jim, hold that microphone as close
I'm
as you can.
sorry. It is at the west end of the street on the south side of the lot, guys. It's like, let's see, lot 70, it's right beside lot 70, phase 2, which is, I'm going to prepare to answer that question. Looking at the drawing up there, you see phase 1, which is, I do that.
That's me.
On the west side of the street, Lakewood Drive goes south and then turns back west. That was the first half of phase two, there were 14 lots there. The entrance or the stub out that we put for the potential future street is at the end of lot, I'm sure that's lot 70. So it leaves Lakewood Circle and goes north into Mr. Field's property there at my boundary.
How does that get back to 321, or how does that get back to a public street?
Well, I wasn't actually at the meeting that this was discussed, but as I understood it after the fact, that the purpose was to have a plan for access, for a second access, even though our original plan that was presented to the council in 05 showed only one entrance in total. So our sketch plan that we presented in 2005 was 230 lots with one entrance, no problems. So we weren't addressing this secondary access until several years, I guess, approximately 10 to 12 years after our original presentation. So we had no plans at that point to do anything other than what our original sketch plan was, which was a single entrance for 230 lots. And so at the request, and it wasn't a small deal, that access, that potential access northerly, is about a $40,000 add-on that we weren't expecting, but we accommodated the folks that were thinking of it at that time, which was not me directly, Mr. Williams, fire department. So their intent was to satisfy the fact that we've made up provisions for a second exit onto 321.
As a part of that provision, did you ever discuss that with Will Phelan?
Oh, no. I didn't discuss it with even you guys. It was Mr. Williams that was privy to all that discussion. I accommodated it, even though, to be perfectly honest, I didn't feel I was obligated to, because my original sketch plan was presenting the 230 lots, a single entrance. So this was an after-the-fact thing that I had to address, or we had to address, but I did accommodate.
So, Mr. Lemons, did you ever discuss that with him? I mean, for you to have a provision to go north on the west side, you knew that somebody on the land to the north, so is that just in hopes of just him agreeing to that down the road, or what?
Yeah, basically it was, but there's a precedence on this I'd like to explain. Shortly before this phase of Lakewood came before the Planning Commission, we were dealing with an identical situation off of Kerr Station Road for Ivan's Place subdivision. And that was a subdivision that only had about 300 foot of frontage on Kerr Station Road, but the property opened up once you got a couple hundred feet back. And at that time, that's what kind of set the precedence for this, we contacted the state fire marshal, Mr. Williams, and had several discussions with him. And Mr. Williams said that it was very, that status quo with the state in situations like this where you had a bunch of lots with one way in and out was if you can't provide a second way in and out, you plan for one. So at least you are within the limitations of the code as it presently exists. So since it worked at Ivan's Place, and no, I did not contact Mr. Phelan. It's up to him. He may never develop that property, or he may sell it to somebody they developed it at that time. but it would then become the city's charge to have that improvement put in across that property, just like it would with any other development we have. But no, have I talked to Mr. Phelan? No, I did not. But we did go along with what had been the precedent alignments placed for the previous project.
So Kevin asked a question about the preliminary plat. Do we know when the preliminary plat approval was, the preliminary plat approval for this phase?
My understanding is that it was when it was prior administration. I cannot find any record of when it was as far as the date of the plat was approved.
Okay.
The access of that road onto, Phelan's property, does it go down the property line, or is that, if there was to be a second access, do you know where that road would have to go into Phelan's property, or will it go down the property line?
Yes, ma'am, I can answer that. Again, if you're looking at the drawing we're looking at up there, the phase two, which was finished in many houses already. At the end of, if you're driving down the street, heading west into that area, the future street is at the very end, and it turns north directly into Mr. Phelan's property. Mr. Phelan's property is at the north edge of that portion of my subdivision. Is that clear?
Where would it have to go from there to get to 321? That,
That would depend on the development plan for the Phelan property. We had planned for our street to butt Mr. Phelan's property, and Mr. Phelan would then devise, or I'm assuming this body would help guide that situation. So since I couldn't dictate to Mr. Phelan what he would do with his property, I literally butted onto his property, my street, future street, and then from there it would be decided in the future as to where it went to gain access to 321.
One thing, just because my office is straight across from Phelan's place, and I do remember that the big issue for us and the issue that I'm concerned about on 321 is the highway department has to agree with the cutouts where where the streets are gonna be. And so like on Marlowe, which is where I am, and Tim did that cut into like where my new office is. To go through those two lots that are in front of me, for instance, there has to be a road that is gonna go all the way over, that's gonna come out eventually where your subdivision, where it goes into his subdivision, eventually there's gonna be there's a master plan for the road to go all the way through over to kind of by the soccer fields. That's the road, you remember? And so they're not planning on any other cuts. And so that, even if he agreed that, hey, we're gonna let you have a road come out to 321 right there, even if Phelan did it, I don't know that the highway department has to approve that.
He'd have to get approval from the highway department.
Yeah, I can tell you that. Yes, anytime you're accessing 321, you're gonna have to get the blessing. As a matter of fact, back, Tim mentioned earlier, back in, I guess it was 04 and 05, my original plan was to have 3 entrances on the 321. Matter of fact, I got the highway department approval, I paid my permit fees, I did all this. As a matter of fact, I spent about $8,000 of drainage improvements. I put a concrete culvert in, a concrete box in, several feet of 3-foot drainage pipe in order to get these 3 exits. So, and that money was already spent. So, and I did have state highway permits for 3 accesses. One of them was actually the existing access that probably, I'm assuming, left over from before they even paid, or before 321 was 321. It was an old access, and we used that for construction, and we built we actually built, almost finished those 3 accesses. And the reason I remember that is I had paid my permits and had gotten the cities, the state's approval and everybody. And during the construction of phase 1, I had to put up a $3,000 or $4,000 deposit for sidewalks along the lake, on the east side of the lake. And in the interim, the city had said, you're gonna have to close off those 3 exits and only have 1. So I put up a berm on each one so people couldn't go out. And when I asked for my money back for the sidewalk, after the sidewalk was completed, they said, no, you can't have your $3,000 because people are using those 2 extra exits, driving over my berms, and so until you permanently close those, so people can't use them, we're not gonna give you your $3,000. And that's the reason I remember that, because I felt the city didn't have the power to take the whole money on one project just because they didn't like what was going on the other project. And it really wasn't my fault that people were driving across my berms, but I did some other things, blocked off, so people couldn't use those extra 2 entrances. They were forced to go out the one. So even from day one, I was told, you're not gonna have 1 entrance on the 321. And that was pretty plain. And I spent several $1,000s at that point, but I decided to not fight the issue, just
Sure.
that's the way it was. So we dealt with the residential area with that situation. So we have dealt with 1 entrance all the time in our planning sessions.
Well, Jim, don't get us wrong. We're very excited about the city of Cabot growing, more houses. That's great. We just want to plan according to code. Current code doesn't allow subdivisions this large to have only 1 entrance. So that's what needs to be worked out in this planning process.
See, to me, that issue would have had to been addressed in 2005. In other words, if you start a building and you're half finished, and they say, well, now, our code now says you got to have this many parking places and this many that. Well, you can't really halfway through the project, just because your ordinance has changed on a project that's already been approved, you can't go backwards. To me, you can't. And it doesn't make sense to, just because you're, and I'm not sure what the ordinance was in 2005, meaning back then it may have said whatever it says now. I haven't read it, but.
Yeah, I mean, unless the fire, department can come to some other design solution for the subdivision, I mean, it's.
Was the project approved in 2005, or was it approved just as the first phase?
No,
Actually, we did the concept drawing that had 3 entrances. And then the city said, no, we're only going to let you have 1 entrance. And I remember the discussion about that, that was 15 years ago. But I remember that the discussion was that we don't want 321 to end up like 89 from City Hall out to 167, where you have a driveway every 100 feet. So at that time, the mindset was, we want 1 entrance for the subdivision. Everybody goes to that 1 entrance. We don't want it to be like what we've got in town. So that's what changed everything for us back in 2005. Now, the first phase that we did after the concept drawing, the preliminary plat, was the commercial area and the first part of the first phase of the residential. So the die was cast at that time, but it was in conjunction with the sketch plat that the city required. So we did everything the city wanted us to do all the way through.
Chief, you have any comments on the layout of? And I know there's several issues, one with, 2 ways out, but also turnaround as well.
they didn't do it.
I would like to see, if it's possible, the original plan that was set forth in 2005. Plans and stuff that I have that I pulled out of our records, brought with me tonight. The only thing that I'm able to find that shows 3 entrances is into the commercial area. So you've got Lakewood in the center, you've got commercial to the right, you've got commercial to the left, and the only 3 entrances that I've been able to find that were submitted were for the commercial, not for the residential. That's addressing one. If I could see that, I could probably go back and research what code said back then. I don't know what the commission would have said or what the fire chief would have said at that time. But forgive me, I grabbed my mask and put on my glasses.
That's right.
But the current code that we've adopted are working under basically states that D-107.1 is 1 and 2 family dwelling residential developments. Developments for 1 and 2 family dwellings, when the number of dwellings exceed 30 shall be provided in 2 separate ways. An approved apparatus access road and shall meet the requirements of section D-107.3. There are 2 exceptions to that. The first exception, which does not apply to them because the homes in there are not sprinkled. So we won't even discuss exception number 1. Exception number 2 is the number of dwelling units shall not be increased. Okay, let me start it over. The number of dwelling units on a single fire apparatus access shall not be increased unless the apparatus access roads will connect with future development as determined by the fire code official. There's no plans that I've seen shows me any detailed plans of how this is going to happen. I mean, I can say I want to be a millionaire tomorrow, but the chances of that happening are slim to none. And if you can't get access from the highway department or access from the gentleman that owns the land, to me, that's not a feasible and working plan. It's just an idea that I have so I can develop the property. What was the second question, Commissioner, about the turnaround? Was there any other discussion on the 30 units with the 1 entrance?
Yeah, I think that answered our question. Any other question?
There is no master street plan for secondary access, tied to secondary access, right? There is no master street plan for your secondary access tied to. There is no requirement for the city to require what is now the FEMA property to provide that secondary access. So there is no plan for secondary access at this time. Okay, thank you.
And you may not have it, I haven't had the chance to research our original sketch plan.
Yeah, Jim, I need you to go to the microphone. Chief, is there anything else? Anybody have anything else for Chief before he steps away? All right, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
We're going to address the other part of this after we address the 30 unit.
The turnaround?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Our original sketch plan, or phase 1, well, not for phase 1. Our original sketch plan, usually the sketch plan is based on my experience, includes the entire project. Phase, in 1 phase or 22 phases, the overall concept is presented in this body. That's where 1 street is shown with 232 lots. Now, obviously, we didn't plan to build 232 lots at one time, but the sketch plan is a conceptual plan. Well, that's my understanding. The purpose of it is to give this body a chance to see the overall plan. And that's where the 1 entrance was shown with 232 lots. Now, that was in 05.
Mr. Green, can you provide us with a approved copy of that original sketch plan? I mean,
I have it in my file, but it's not, and it was used several times. I'm assuming it was used when, again, this place we're talking about today is The phase two was brought to your attention as 40 or 41 lots. 14 on the north side of the lake, 30 on the south side of the lake. That's all the preliminary plan. And we do have all of those options. So the property we're addressing tonight was done as a preliminary at the same time on the north side of the lake. The weather caught us, we decided not to finish the south side of the lake because of the weather, and we started to go back up approximately a year ago, once the weather cleared up, to finish the other half of phase two, and that's the reason it's named 2A, is the preliminary part was addressed. And that's when this little stub street that was going into Phelan's property was brought into being. So phase two sketch plan, and we did present the council with another sketch plan, again showing 200 plus lots. With the original single entrance plus a future entrance on Phelan's property. So this body approved another sketch plan, this time, let me call it 1.5 inches, for lack of a better term. So we assumed at that point that this was, at least this part was a settled issue. Now, as far as I was concerned, this single entrance, 232 lots, was decided in 2005. Because if not, I would have done something completely different. I've invested several $100,000 on the field, pump stations, this and that, and I would not have gone that far had not this body, probably none of you guys, but this body addressed 230 lots with a single entrance and a picture. I've got that. I don't know. We may have to go back and search your records and find where it was presented to you.
Sir, if I could interject here, this says 2005, and that you had plans for 3 entrances, is that correct?
Well,
Not on to 321. It's not, there's 3 entrances into the commercial area, but there's still 1 entrance into 321.
Onto the property. Now,
The commercial property been built somewhere, I've been on here since 2007. And
it was built
we
in 2000.
addressed this issue, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And then we're right back where we were then. It was a fire department issue. We only developed so many lots in there with 1 entrance. And it seems like we're right back where we were then.
I feel the same way. I thought it was over in 2005, or I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Jerry,
Is there a time frame when you approve something? Is there a time frame, 10 years, a decade, 5 years?
I mean, we don't even have a record of the 2005, approval.
But even if we did have, it, would it be on there? No, it's not here.
Well, the thing is, codes change, and we're always under the current fire prevention code, and the current fire prevention code, as Chief stated, is restricts it to a certain number of lots. So we
That's
got.
why I'm asking. If we wouldn't honor it, because the code change, there's no need to look it up.
No, not that I know of. So Jim, I don't think we're going to talk in circles here. So I think the best thing to do is let's see if we can't find the 2005 document. Let's let our office do some digging.
If to save that issue, the 2016, when 16 or 17 is when the preliminary plan, when it was a sketch plan showing 300 lots. And that's go back to that. That sketch plan showed 230 lots, the single entrance we have now, and a future entrance into people's property. That was approved recently.
Yeah, and if you had the second entrance that went into Phelan's property, we wouldn't be.
But my point is, we showed you what we had, meaning, on 2 years ago, that's all we had. We didn't have anything beyond this on the street. It's going into the people's property. And you check it.
Yeah, I don't have any record of that, Jim. I don't.
I think that's only 2 years ago, so we want to find that. So we know, I feel we know, that we can present you with a preliminary plat signed by, with the planning commission that shows 230 lots, a single entrance out to 321, and a potential entrance into Phelan's property. So I'm fairly certain that would be easily named, and so you approve that on, as a preliminary plan. So now we've gone beyond 2005, and we've got something that's 2 years old that you agreed to.
Let's take a look at that, Jim, because currently the final plat as it stands right now is the property is not ready for a final plat approval based on asphalt, as-built. I mean, there's a whole list of things that need to happen. So what I'd like to recommend is we table this item to next month. Let's do some research. Let's find the 2017, 2005, and figure out a path forward. So we're.
On behalf, I think he's trying to save a lot of money. He's got to get the streets approved, but he's got to do all that.
Well, the final plat can't be approved because the as-built and asphalt and gravel, all that's not finished.
16 plat has been approved. Do we all or not?
Well, if it's a preliminary plat, I mean, he's in here for a final plat approval. And so there's
Preliminary was approved, I think, approximately.
there's some discrepancy between the final plat approval and this preliminary plat because right now we don't meet code. I mean, it's a violation of.
There are two outstanding issues as far as completion, and that is asphalt and asphalts. And those, we planted asphalt 3 days ago, it's rained. So we are days away from completing the requirements with the exception of what we're discussing now.
But the current way it stands now, I don't think we can approve this at this meeting. So we'd like to table this till next month and see if we got some more progress made.
I was hoping that I wouldn't have to wait a month once if asphalt is done, let's say 4 days from now. I've got builders chewing on my tail, we started on construction, and so I was hoping that we didn't have to wait a month. Assuming that I got my asphalt in and asphalt. Mr. Bond is working on the survey group, Mr. Bond working on asphalt, they're behind. So, but anyway.
Well, and I'm worried about life safety issues too, Mr. Green. I mean, we can't get a fire truck, in there, something happens on that main drive and somebody's house is burning. I mean, there's no way to get another fire truck in there.
Any question on the, I'm trying to get ahead of the game. I'm assuming there's a question on
The turnaround. Yeah, Chief, you want to address that one as well?
I'd like to get all the properties.
The only thing I have on that is for the approval, apparently there's more issues than just mine. I did one thing, Mr. Green, for putting in that 96-foot gravel turnaround at the end, but without the road to that access, it's useless at this point. It's the only addition that I had to the
Okay, all right, thank you.
No problem.
And I say put turnaround, good.
All right.
To the turnaround, because that's right now, I have fire trucks that are responding to current built houses that are having to back
The entire way out.
24 lots to reach the Lake Shore Drive and even have a spot to turn the fire. And that's not acceptable.
That's not safe. You got kids playing and anyway, all right. Jim, we're going to table this, and so I'd like to entertain a motion to table this to next month from the commissioners.
So moved.
Okay, motion from Lowe. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Moudy. Roll call, please.
Burke,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Ward, Mounty,
Yes.
All right, next item on the agenda, item B.
403 Commerce Park, Mark Allen.
And Laura Nobles is going to do our staff presentation.
There's really not much of a presentation on this. This property is located at 403 Commerce Park. It is currently zoned I-1, which is industrial. There has been a prospective tenant that is wanting to move into this address for a recreational use, for paintball, an entertainment center, for, like I said, paintball, climbing, radio control toys, and other similar recreational activities. However, in our UDC, we do not allow for commercial use to go into industrial use. Industrial use is a lot stronger restrictions versus the commercial use. We do not currently in the UDC have a use for a gym or a recreational facility of this type. However, we do have a provision under the table of uses when there's not a determination for a use to be allowed. They can submit a letter to the planning commission, and the planning commission can designate them to go into this use as long as there is in works a use to be proposed for this establishment to go in. So as of when I received this information from this gentleman that would like to rent in this place, I have started working on adding a use for gyms, for recreational facilities of this type. Because this is not the first time I've had a tenant come to me and ask where they can go rent, unless it's in a commercial development. I myself do not want to turn away a business that wants to come to town. So we do have the option, or you have the option, to allow this tenant to go into this industrial park, set up their business while the planning stages of bringing back a code revision can be done. And at that time, once we establish a use, then that business will be able to officially or by code be able to be a use in the industrial park. It's been probably many years since the UDC has been updated in this category or added any categories. It's time for other businesses that do not have a classification. Our general commercial is too broad. And I would like to pull some of those broad commercial businesses out and label them here in gyms, recreational facilities. So under the code, you are allowed to, this gentleman has presented a letter to my office, which is in your packet. I'll let him speak in just 1 second. And y'all can determine if y'all feel that he can go into this industrial zone as a commercial business while I bring back to you probably in the next couple of months, a use for him to be able to officially be in this industrial zone.
Okay. All right, sir, do you want to come up and state your name, address?
Good evening, Mark Allen. I live in the Cottonwood Lane Ward. My background, military. I got out of service back in '96. I lived in New Jersey Was in the telecom industry back in 2002. The industry, the telecom bubble popped, a lot of layoffs. Left me to a point where I had to reinvent myself, and being that I had a recreational business or recreational gameplay of paintball, I saw an opportunity with my family members to start a business in New Jersey. We ran it for 14 years and we kept selling it off. Long story short is I have 5 children. We came back to Arkansas where I was stationed, where I met my wife 20 years later. She says, I need help with the kids. Let's move back to the family. So being an entrepreneur for so long, I went back into telecommunications out here in Arkansas. Currently doing that now as an engineer. And I still have that desire to have my own business, call my own shots per se. So this facility came onto the market, being that's vacant for a few months. There's a Team Fisher or Pfizer team that was there. I've looked at other properties, the pick and pull on 67, trying to get into Price Chopper, it's on Main Street there. Looked at the old Knights facility, and none of them seem to have what this facility offers, and it's a space, an open bay area that accepts multiple fields. So I have a good experience with paintball, but I also want to do more things. The facility I had back in New Jersey was also a commercial level 3, and we were using it for recreational. Prior to my being in that facility, it was vacant for a number of years, and we were able to do something there. So that's why I bring to Cabot. My 5 children I have, they're tired of skiing every weekend. They're actually looking for other things to do, and I was like, well, Daddy had a paintball business. Let's see what we do. And for the past year, I've been looking at these facilities, and this one being on the market, it seems to be most suited for my needs.
Okay. Mark, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Commissioners, you have any questions?
Does this require just a variance?
So as Laura stated, this was require a special use permit, right? Or a conditional use permit?
I'm going to read exactly what it says, because technically we can't necessarily give them a special use permit because it was not, a special use permit was not advertised for this.
Okay.
This was just a letter that he is presenting for y'all. It says if there is a determination of uses not listed, the administrative officials will have the authority to determine the compatibility of land use within the use units listed in section 4.61. Such determination shall be made by examining the nature and external impacts of the land use in comparison with the description of the use. When a determination of the capability of the land cannot be made due to the capability to determine use within the use unit, the planning commission shall designate a zoning district in which the use can be determined to be compatible based on the nature and the external impacts of the use. The planning commission shall provide written findings supporting this decision. The land use shall be treated as a special permit use until such reasonable time that the planning commission and the city council can amend the unified development code. And that's where I was talking about that I will in a couple months bring back a revision that will propose a use for this type of facility to be able to go into C3 or industrial. Because this type of facility absolutely should be allowed to go to industrial park. But we don't have a code that says he can right now.
Right. Just specifically, we're voting not on a special use permit, but just the use of this facility
Building to be in an
to be in that industrial. Okay.
Strictly for this business only at this address.
Gotcha. Which it seems like a perfect fit. I mean, it's based on the location, type of facility, type of building. I mean, commissioners, any questions or comments? Y'all,
A motion to do whatever it takes to build industrial buildings.
I got a motion to approve this use. Second?
Second.
Second from Mowdy. Roll call, please.
Burt,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Ward, Mowdy.
All right, the use is approved. Thank you. Yeah, and good luck. We'll bring our kids out. All right, guys. Next on the agenda is community input. Anybody from the community? Amy, did you come for any other community input?
No, thank you. Oh, well, we want to talk to Ken. Ken may not go to that.
That's right. Proud of that boy. He came in third place today. Yeah. That's right. All right. Yeah, thank you. All right, I'll close the community input. Before we do adjournment, our next meeting will be at the Annex facility. We'll be back home in the Annex. So see you guys next month. To have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thanks, guys. See y'all next month. Thank you all.
Good night.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Next meeting, the date, it'll be right Christmas.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it'll be,
It's in the calendar.
I think it's, I don't know if it's right in behind,